to move across central Alabama this evening. We're on your side with when we can expect all this wet weather to move out and if you should keep that umbrella nearby for the weekend.
Plus, we're taking a weather extra look at the devastating outbreak of April 27, 2011 and what made it such a historic and significant event on a meteorological level.
Live on your side. First Alert Weather Extra starts right now.
And welcome into Weather Extra. Some more storms today. You know, Lauren, we get into these patterns. We talk about scattered storms. Sometimes you'll have kind of what I call it skips a day. And then the following day you see a better coverage. But that's what's happened today.
It is. And I remember that when I first started working here, you're like, some days, typically on a day you'll get storms, the next day can be quiet, then they fire right back up again.
They fire right back up. That's what we're seeing right now. We actually have a severe thunderstorm warning. Let's get to that. It's impacting the southern part of the area. You're looking in the direction of that severe storm. A live look from Oak Grove. This is right there at Sylacauga. That's Highway 280 you're looking at, but that storm is moving across Coosa County. Some intense lightning with this thing. A new warning has been issued. The warning has expired for Chilton County, but we do have a severe thunderstorm warning until 6:45. This is again for Coosa County. Now this is way south of the Talladega Superspeedway, south to Childersburg, and south to Sylacauga. Although around Fayetteville and the Stewartville area, you see there's some heavy rain here that's going to be lifting in, and you're probably going to hear some loud rumbles as this moves on through. Let me give you some first alert times, the times of arrival, and notice on the screen we have Hanover 6:39, Cruzville 6:42, Mount Olive around 6:47, Kellington at 6:51. So a first alert for this to move in around Kellington at 6:51 out here. That's on the Tallapoosa-Coosa County line. Again, that warning is until 6:45. Frequent lightning right now around Bentleyville. Now the rain's tapering off in West Alabama. If you're still noticing some rain out there around Tuscaloosa, the back edge of this is now pushing through Utah. It's about to taper off, and I think we're in good shape for the rest of the night. The rain's ended in Fayette. It's ended at Jasper. Dora, now the rain's tapering off. We're still seeing some pockets of heavier rain. It was coming down right around the super speedway, some heavy rain falling, but the heaviest now pushing in towards Coldwater Mountain, Munford, and now Anniston getting in on some of that heavier rain, as well as Jacksonville. Let's go in for a close-up here, and I was seeing some lightning with this, about 30 strikes with these storms on the map. So there is some cloud-to-ground lightning pushing through parts of Calhoun County. This is going to be pushing out of the area, and then for us in East Alabama as well. Once this ends, this is the main event for the evening, and once this rain tapers off. But it's coming down here at Jacksonville State. You can see where it's 78 degrees right now on First Alert Sky Vision. Next 60 minutes, rain over East Alabama. Most of this has tapered off for central and western areas, and this will be it for today. We'll see those rain chances, though, coming back in a small way over the weekend. Let's talk about tomorrow. Just a 20% chance of maybe a shower, and then we're going to be seeing just a small chance for an isolated shower as well on Sunday. But we're back out in Texas as we check in with storm spotter Ryan Carty. He actually captured this tornado yesterday. This was out of South Plains and Matador, Texas, as severe storms raced across that area. Often at times you get into late April and you start to shift into the month of May. We see that tornado threat start to shift further west. But as we look back to April and recent events here, of course, one that stands out, the tornadoes that impacted our state, that generational outbreak on April 27, 2011. And as we approach the 14th anniversary, we're answering the question of why it was such a significant event on a meteorological scale. And meteorologist Lauren Linehan standing by right now to tell us a little bit more about what we call the synoptic setup, Lauren. And it was one of those events where you looked at every severe weather parameter and they were off the charts.
Right. And that's the thing. You don't get that every day. It's very rare. And oftentimes when we're looking at severe weather, we kind of use this acronym as meteorologists to help organize our brain as we figure out that puzzle, try to solve that puzzle of the atmosphere. And we call it SLIM. And you'll see us talk about this a lot on Weather Extra. You need wind shear, you need lift in the atmosphere, and you need instability and moisture. And all four of those were there, and they were there in an unusually large amount. So let's start first in the upper levels of the atmosphere where we have the jet stream. When we are looking in the atmosphere, we often want to look for what are called troughs and ridges. Troughs are these dips in the jet stream, and ridges are where you see them climbing. So you have this high pressure that is building higher up. So what we had was a very large long wave trough. Sometimes troughs can be a little smaller in size, but you can see this is looking at 7 a.m. April 26th. We just had a very large trough that was moving across the country. And when you have troughs this large, it's kind of hard for them to move along. They just remain very stagnant, and so they just don't move as quickly. And so what we see is that with this trough, it just kind of stayed in the same area. And one thing that was so concerning about April 27th is the jet stream was bringing in very strong winds. We call it a jet streak, these really strong winds embedded within the atmosphere, within the jet stream. And that was feeding into Alabama. And that is what was one of the culprits for bringing these dangerous storms that we saw on April 27th. Now, we go a little farther down, look at the surface. There was a cold front. And remember, the thing is with April 27th, it wasn't just one round of storms. It was technically three. You had one in the morning, and that was produced. Here we are, April 27th from 1 a.m. to 7 a.m. There was initially a QLCS. You hear us talk about that on Weather Extra, quasi-linear convective system. So that allowed some tornadoes to develop during the morning hours. There was even a secondary QLCS late morning, early afternoon that allowed some tornadoes to develop in northwest Alabama. And those left behind what is called an outflow boundary. That boundary that was left behind in northwest Alabama helped to really enhance the wind shear, that change in wind speed or direction as you go up in height. So you already had enough wind shear in the atmosphere from those strong winds aloft. You had also some very strong winds in the low level jet. So you were just continuing to amplify already a pretty dangerous situation. And so this is looking at 7 p.m. on April 27th. That cold front is getting closer. Along that front that was moving in, you had low pressure. When you have low pressure, that contributes to rising motion. And the reason we had low pressure is because winds were going away aloft. We call it divergence, and so it's like a vacuum, and that rising air has to just keep on moving up. So it was just a very dangerous situation. There was also some warmer air higher up in the atmosphere, and that prevented storms from getting going until later in the afternoon, and that's when we saw supercell thunderstorms. But hey, even though we're not seeing severe weather to that scale, it's still a good time to download the WBRC First Alert weather app. You'll be able to get the latest updates on the pop-up showers and storms as they arise over the weekend and get notifications for your exact location.
All right, well, coming up, if you have plans for the weekend, I want to show you the latest on the Let me just show you the fishing forecast. You can see tomorrow we're coming up on a new moon. In the morning, if you're heading out on the water, there'll be an overcast sky. We'll break into a partly cloudy sky. Moonrise time at 5:07. If you keep up with that, the moon should be directly overhead around midday. So looks like sometimes when that happens and the moon's overhead during the day, it's believed that fish move a little bit better. So maybe you'll have some luck out there tomorrow. But let's check out the river stages. And right now, all the gauges were showing all green. You can see all the dots out there showing we're at good levels. I can actually click on some of these. We'll check out at Roebuck Landing here around Brush Creek. We're showing 82 feet there along the Warrior River. There's just one area I was noticing over in East Mississippi. It looks like on the Tombigbee River we're seeing some minor flooding happening there, but we're in good shape here across Alabama. And I want to mention this: next 3 days, if you're around the lake, if you're out on the river, well, the skeeter meter, it has jumped into the high to the extreme category right now. So out there enjoying some of this nice weather over the weekend. Don't forget about the mosquitoes as we have warmed up quite a bit. But we're going to be talking more about the warmer temperatures in 30 seconds. We talk about those upcoming events for your weekend and if the rain will stick around. Plus, we're talking about how you can keep your furry friends safe during the spring. We'll be right back. All right, a lot of events happening this weekend. Of course, the big Talladega race, you'll see it right here on WBRC. But as we look at the conditions across Birmingham, I just want to show you the rain starting to taper off. And that's some good news there for folks in Gardendale, because we have the Magnolia Festival that's happening this evening. And it looks like for the remainder of tonight, I think we're going to dry out. It's going to feel a little humid out there after all the rain, but a little bit cooler for us. Temperatures right now in the Birmingham area, as you can see on the screen, we cooled off into the 60s. So that's what it's going to feel like out there. Tomorrow, March for Babies out at Railroad Park. And we're expecting some clouds in the morning, but it looks like dry conditions for that event happening in Birmingham tomorrow. Feeling nice out there. We have Celebrate Hoover Day coming up. The afternoon tomorrow, maybe an isolated shower. We actually had one model that was showing maybe a pop-up shower in the vicinity later in the day. So we'll just keep that 20% chance in there. Anything that pops up tomorrow, if we do see any rain, should be brief, but there is a low chance, but that's mostly for the afternoon. Certainly don't cancel your plans tomorrow. Plenty of time for outdoor activities. Plenty of time maybe to get out and walk the dog. Right, Lauren?
Yeah, that's right, Wes. Tomorrow should be great weather for it. Yes, it's going to be warm. It'll be a little humid, but hey, we'll be wishing for this weather when it comes to the next couple months and we get dead into the deep parts of summer. But looking at the dog walking forecast for tomorrow, as Wes mentioned, there's still going to be some clouds around, some breaks of sunshine at times. I think there will be enough breaks of sunshine to put temperatures into low mid 80s, so it's not going to be too steamy. You don't have to worry about making sure your pet's paws aren't hot just yet, but I would definitely just stay up to date on that First Alert weather app. We're just tracking isolated rain chances tomorrow, but we'll keep a close eye on it. Well, as you prepare to take your furry friends out on a stroll, you may want to also remember these important tips. I had the chance to speak with Dr. Danielle Bernal of Wellness Pet Company as she talks about the best practices to keep your pets healthy during the spring months. So tell us, we often think about taking care of our pets during extreme temperatures that we often see, of course, in the winter and summer, but there are ways we can prepare our pets for spring as well. What are some of the common issues we see that our pets can deal with during the spring months?
Yeah, absolutely. Well, there's certain allergies and seasonal upsets that most definitely start to flare up when it comes to spring. It's that change of temperature. That's when we start to see things like more of those fleas and ticks coming out. We can see more of those seasonal allergies that come from the environment or contact. And then, of course, one that kind of hangs around all year round is they can get some food allergies as well. But with all of those, what you'll start to maybe notice is your dog itching, scratching, maybe some ear upsets, or even some gastrointestinal concerns. And those are signs that there might be something bothering your pet.
So what are some ways going forward in the spring months that we can help our pets with these type of pests and allergies?
Yeah, so the first and foremost one is make sure you're up to date with your flea and tick prevention. That's a really easy fix that can keep the scratches away. The next one is when it comes to their overall well-being, if you're at all concerned that your pet may be suffering a concern, go speak to your veterinarian. They'll be able to do a full assessment and see what's underlying. And then the last one I encourage is also maybe look to, can you avoid the things that you know might be causing your pet to have an upset? Whether that's contact allergies with flowers and pollens coming out, or it could be something more like a food allergy. And in those cases, there's lots of nutritional choices that you can find that kind of limit the ingredients, limit the exposure, and then boost them with extra benefits that'll help keep them nice and healthy.
Now, let's say someone just has an indoor animal. Maybe they just have indoor cats versus a dog who's going in and out, or an outdoor cat. Do they still need to get flea and tick prevention for any indoor pets?
Absolutely. Especially things like heartworm, fleas, ticks, those can go inside and outside, and they love warm spaces like between floorboards, in those couches. So even if they're not getting outside, those fleas and ticks can still get inside. So the best thing we can do is keep them up on that preventative care, and that'll make sure they stay healthy.
And what are some signs we can look for in our pets to see maybe they're dealing with some allergy issues, or perhaps they have maybe flea or tick issues?
Yes, the big one is itchies and scratchies. Once they start doing for those, you'll know that there's something bothering them. But it doesn't just limit to that. Otitis externa, which is the fancy name for an ear infection, is another one that we'll often see, especially with dogs with long ears. But so too is hair loss, redness, sneezing, those respiratory coughing even, or sometimes vomiting and diarrhea. So it's quite a wide range of potential signs that could also be other things. So that's why in all of those situations, speak to your vet. They'll They'll help you narrow it down and find the best way to look after them.
Well, the dogs and the cats aren't the only ones getting out for the spring. Check this out. Listen up. If you're in Shelby County, a black bear spotted. This was taken by William Richard on his trail cam. This was close to Highway 119 near Lake Purdy. The bear was most likely traveling along the Oak Mountain Ridge towards Leeds at the beginning of the month. There are no causes for concern at the moment. He had to verify earlier in the month.
Well, Wes, that's cool and all, but I'll raise you a groundhog. Check out this photo out in Glencoe. And you're like, what? What am I looking at? We all kind of had to zoom in too, but that little fella right smack dab there in the middle is a groundhog. No, he did not see his shadow, but he did likely see some passing clouds and showers. Hey, maybe he can be one of our weather watchers, Wes. So don't go anywhere. We continue to talk about what to expect as we wrap up the month of April and head to the classroom where we meet our newest junior weather watchers. No groundhogs included. We'll be right back.
Welcome back into First Alert Weather Extra. That severe thunderstorm warning's been canceled. That was in effect across Coosa County, but still an intense storm here pushing north towards Alexander City. Some heavy rain and good water. That's lifting north towards Ashland. We gave you that first alert if you're in Ashland, Millerville, those areas. You can see some arrival times here. Cleveland Crossroads 7:03, Shady Grove around 7:08, and the Glades community around 7:15. But still seeing quite a bit of lightning. There's some heavy rain falling around Childersburg, Coosa Pines, storms. This is starting to taper off around Harpersville. So Wilsonville, Harpersville, that's the back edge of the rain. That's going to slide on by, and then that's it for the remainder of the night. This is going to be the main round of rain once we get this out of here. Also some rain now over into Cleburne County, Jacksonville, heavier pockets of rain. The heaviest of this is now passed to the east of Anniston. We go in, there's the super speedway here at Talladega. You can see the back edge of the rain now pushing through, and we'll get this out of here soon and have some quiet weather for the overnight. Maybe some patchy fog out there as well, but you can see that slides on by. Model data suggesting maybe tonight, maybe an isolated shower, but the threat of storms, that's coming to an end. The rain's cooled things off. There'll be some leftover clouds in the morning out the door, some low clouds around, maybe a sprinkle or two, kind of overcast early on, and then we'll break into a partly sunny sky. We'll heat up with highs in the 80s tomorrow. Still could see a pop-up shower. Notice the forecast data suggesting we need to watch it maybe around 2 to 4 o'clock in the afternoon. Maybe some development around Smith Lake, maybe close to Hoover there, maybe an isolated shower. So just watch it later in the afternoon. Then things are quiet tomorrow night. We go into Sunday. It looks like mostly dry conditions until the afternoon. Again, maybe some showers trying to slide in from the northwest, especially over West Alabama. So East Alabama, it looks drier for Sunday, but a greater chance over West Alabama. But check in with Matt tomorrow morning and Lauren tomorrow night as we fine-tune that forecast over the weekend and into Sunday. But the muggy meter yesterday, it looked like we might get some less humid air in here and some refreshing air. I know it's cooled off tonight after all the storms, but that heat and the muggy weather is going to come back by early next week. We're talking highs back in the mid 80s. So a big warm up on the way as we go to the First Alert 10-day forecast. Monday into Tuesday, middle 80s. Not a lot of wet weather. We'll keep a mention of a stray shower or storm in the mix early next week, but it does look like by next Thursday, we will see a greater coverage of scattered storms. So next Thursday and Friday, we do have a 40% chance of rain. We may need to bump that up, but that's why we have first alert. And also for Saturday and Sunday, looks like first weekend of May, dry conditions. How about some weather in the classroom? And right now, we take you to West Point, Alabama, and that is where our very own meteorologist Megan Thomas was there today to have a chance to visit the students at West Point Intermediate School in Coleman County. She spoke to the 4th and 5th grade girls there. They learned about being a meteorologist and other various lessons as part of Leadership Day. Of course, junior weather watchers now, and teachers, you can sign up at WBRC.com. Lauren?
Oh, we love to see girls interested in STEM. So glad Megan was able to go out. And I know a lot of people get interested in weather events based on significant ones that they have happened to them, and then they want to learn more about meteorology. So I know we have some meteorologists now working in the field who are where they are because of April 27th, 2011. So I wanted to talk more about that analysis we were doing, the weather lowdown on why the setup was what it was and why it's so rare. So this is looking at the surface moisture. Remember, dew points tell us how much moisture is in the atmosphere. So you can see this corridor of really muggy air, and this is 7 a.m. on April 26th. So this is the day before things even fired up. And you can see that muggier air just continues to move northward from the Gulf Coast. And we have that first round coming in that morning. We're talking April 27th during the morning. You had that QLCS, that batch of storms that moved through. And then there's a little lull. That lull is where the problem occurred because the atmosphere was able to recover. We say a lot when rain comes through, it helps to cool things off. It can stabilize the atmosphere. But unfortunately, we had this period where the atmosphere was able to recover. And so we saw that really muggy air just keep lifting in from the Gulf Coast. I mean, we're talking dew points in the upper 60s into the 70s. 70s are dew points that you see during the summer months, and temperatures at the surface were in the 80s. So that's just a recipe for disaster when you see all the other ingredients that were in place. We mentioned that there were these really strong winds higher up in the atmosphere. There was specifically a jet streak, this corridor, really strong winds that moved in from the jet stream, but also in the lower levels, we call this the 850 millibar pressure level that we as meteorologists look at. We have to look at the low level jet, and those can be really fast winds just above the surface that can also contribute to storm development. So here we are again, 7 a.m. April 26, showing that really strong low level jet off to our west. But then here we are on the morning of April 27th. We see that corridor of 75, 80 mile per hour winds about 1,500 feet above the surface. Those can really help to ramp ramp up storms and make them more intense. And then we see this 90-mile-per-hour corridor of winds over Mississippi, and then that just continues to move north and eastward into the afternoon on April 27th. And because we saw that low-level jet really ramping up, in addition to all the other ingredients, that very warm air in place, plenty of moisture in the atmosphere, you had that low pressure that was allowing that rising motion and storms to grow really tall and vertically. We just don't see all of those ingredients lining up all at one time. So definitely a generational event. Well, switching gears, it's been nearly 7 months since Hurricane Helene. And since then, the U.S. Army Corps of Engineers says 5 million cubic yards of storm debris have been removed. They say it's a significant milestone, but the work is not quite over. Justin Berger reports.
This is the work. Of the 5 million cubic yards collected, more than 60% comes from western North Carolina's waterways. The man in charge of debris cleanup efforts in western North Carolina, Colonel Brad Morgan, says the Army Corps' goal is to have the vast majority of debris cleanup completed by midsummer. That means right-of-way, which he says is generally complete, waterway, private property, and commercial property. He estimates there to be about 6 million cubic yards of total debris the Corps and their contractors have or are planning to remove.
That number can continue to grow and likely will as we continue to execute additional work in additional locations throughout western North Carolina.
Thursday, Lee Forsgren, the acting Assistant Secretary of the Army for Civil Works, appointed by President Donald Trump, surveyed the Hominy Creek River Park temporary offload site, one of many sites where debris is staged before being hauled off to a temporary debris management site.
The president was very clear when he came here in January that he is not going to forget western North Carolina.
Michael Watley, the former NCGOP chairman, grew up in Blowing Rock.
Debris removal is one of the most visible aspects of the storm recovery, and I think the fact that FEMA and the Corps of Engineers are working all day, every day to try and get that done is tremendously important.
Concerns have been raised over impacts of debris removal, but Army Corps officials say operations are being executed under current environmental and cultural procedures.
What we're doing on our waterways, what we are doing in the communities is a must.
Still some storms in areas to the south, so stay weather alert. Looks like Lauren around the city of Talladega still could have some heavier rain.
Right. Stay safe, y'all.
Trusted folks, there.
Oops. Thank you, you too. All right, Bell Media in 5, 4, 3, 2. Hey everyone, I'm WBRC First Alert meteorologist Lauren Linehan with a look at your 10-day forecast. So we still have isolated storm chances over the weekend, possibly a few more storms on Sunday. So we switch back to a northwest flow pattern. There's actually a weak front coming in this weekend, so it could be slightly drier in terms of the humidity on Sunday, but we don't want to rule out a storm chance. So pack the poncho if you're headed to Talladega. Still going to be warm, and then as we look ahead to next week, the temperatures are really going to be ramping up as a ridge of high pressure builds in, and that should also help rain chances to stay still fairly isolated at least through midweek. But by Thursday and Friday, we have a first alert for another system headed our way that could bring some scattered showers and storms. We're not looking at a severe threat, so no organized chance of severe weather, but we'll still watch for any storms that could produce some heavy downpours and lightning. Now looking ahead to next weekend, which is the first weekend of May, and into early May for next Monday, it does look like we're going to be staying dry and on the warm and humid side. Remember, you can always get that most up-to-date forecast on the free WBRC First Alert weather app.